views expressed on this program are not necessarily those of WTJX, its board, staff, or underwriters.
Good day. You are listening to Ability Radio. I am one of your hosts, Dawn Dyer of the Disability Rights Center of the Virgin Islands. Today, we have our Director of Advocacy and Assistant to the Executive Director, Attorney Archie Jennings, and we are joined by our guest, Dr. Ramona Moss, who has served as the chair of the U.S. Virgin Islands Board of Psychology Examiners since 2009. We will be discussing the importance of licensed mental health professionals, the role of the Board of Psychological Examiners, and the protections available under our PAMI program, which is the Protection and Advocacy of Individuals with Mental Illness. Disability Rights Center of the Virgin Islands provides direct and systemic legal services to people with disabilities, including those with severe mental illness. We provide advice and consultation, direct representation, advocacy, and disability rights education. We do not provide direct mental health therapy or treatment services. However, we can assist with referrals to the appropriate agencies. We can be reached at 340-772-1200 or by visiting us online at www.drcvi.org. Our guest, Dr. Ramona Moss, is a graduate of Howard University and is also listed in the National Register of Health Service Psychologists. She is nationally certified as a school psychologist and is licensed in both the Virgin Islands and the state of Maryland. Dr. Moss has taught and served as the campus psychologist for the University of the Virgin Islands and provided intern supervision. Dr. Moss is a past president and past education chairperson of the Association of the Virgin Islands Psychologists and has been the local representative of the American Psychological Association Council of Representatives and has served on the Continuing Education Committee for the American Psychological Association. Thank you, Dr. Moss, for joining us today to talk about the very important work of the board of the U.S. Virgin Islands Board of Psychology Examiners. Can you please share? Good morning. Can you please share with us the purpose of the board?
Yes. Well, the purpose of the board, which was established in 1994 by the legislature, by the 20th legislature of the Virgin Islands, was to protect the citizens of the Virgin Islands from unqualified individuals who could be offering psychological services.
So why is it essential for individuals seeking mental health assistance to ensure that their professional that they're working with is licensed?
Well, there's several reasons. One is you want to make sure that the person actually attended, a qualifying school. You want to make sure that they graduated, that they took the coursework necessary to do this kind of work. And mostly important is that you need if the person is not on the board, then licensed by the board, then you have no reprieve. If you have a grievance and you will have no one to complain to. If a person is licensed, you can complain to the board, have a hearing, and get a determination. But if you deal with person who's not qualified and you're not happy, there's nothing you can do about it. Now, if you feel like you've been harmed, there's nothing that you can actually do unless you wanted to go to a private lawyer, who in that case would also tell you, well, that person wasn't licensed. So it is important to deal with people who are licensed.
And what if someone is licensed stateside, but they're doing telehealth for someone in the Virgin Islands?
Well, that has been a somewhat of a problem because the board is not able to control who that person is. Now, the person can say they're licensed in the states, but how do you know that that's true? You may be able to go to a website and see. You would have to do research to even see if there were complaints against them or if they were taken off of their license was revoked. That's one issue. The other issue is, there's a lot of cultural differences. So persons who have not been exposed to the culture of the West Indies and the Virgin Islands, they can be operating from a different viewpoint. And the third thing is that payments, well, if you're going to self-pay, of course, that's up to you, but payments from insurance companies and Medicare and Medicaid, that money is supposed to go to providers in the Virgin Islands. So to keep, financial stability within the territory.
And if someone was looking to obtain treatment or services from a licensed provider, how would they go about getting that information to make sure that they're with someone who is properly licensed and reputable?
Well, they can go in the phone book. They can go to the website. They can Google licensed psychologists in the Virgin Islands. I don't know if their primary care doctor would have that information, but it's readily available.
Okay. And do you have any insight as to whether or not we have enough psychiatrists in the USVI that are prescribing medications to people with severe mental illness?
Well, that is a major issue for the Virgin Islands. No, we do not have enough psychiatrists. And some years ago, there was a bill to allow doctoral level psychologists who had further their education with a master's in psychopharmacology to be allowed to prescribe psychotropic medications. However, that bill did not pass. Now, I think that's the way of the future. There are presently 7 states that have prescribing psychologists or medical psychologists, and also the territory of Guam allows it because there's just not enough psychiatrists, and you need mental health professionals that can, that have been studying mental health, the brain, to prescribe those types of medications. So we would like to see that happen in the Virgin Islands, but it hasn't happened so far.
And why is medical, being prescribed medication and not just, doing normal therapy? Is that important that you have both of those? Or can people just seek therapy and that would be enough?
Right. It's very important because, most mental health problems are not due to childhood or parenting, misfortunes. They're actually due to neurological conditions and chemical imbalances. So you need the medications to kind of balance the person. I mean, we're talking about schizophrenia, bipolar, conditions. And these people cannot function adequately without medications. So, and it's suffering on their part too, to post-traumatic stress syndrome, obsessive compulsive disorders, major depression. The medication is needed for that. And it's the same as a chronic health condition. If you're diabetic, you need insulin. If you have high blood pressure, you need medication for that. So if you have a mental health problem, a serious mental health problem, you need medication for that also.
And you had stated that a major problem that we have here in the territory is that we don't have enough psychiatrists to prescribe medications for these individuals. How do you think that impacts us as a community when treatment is delayed for these people because they're unable to access services?
Well, it affects the families, of course, to have a child, spouse, a relative that has severe mental health problems. That person is not usually able to function in society. They can't hold a job, so causes a financial hardship. They have relationship problems, which causes social hardships. And oftentimes the unstable and cause legal problems with their behaviors. So, it's a whole realm of things that happen when a person is mentally ill and does not have medications and the support that they need to function in the society.
Thank you. Attorney Jennings, can you explain some of Disability Rights Center of the Virgin Islands advocacy activities that are done to help people with severe mental illness? Looks like we might have lost Attorney Jennings, but I can say that we have several programs in place to help people, and sometimes that's getting them a guardianship or helping children access services in the public school system through special education, as well as providing one-on-one advocacy, which might include reasonable accommodations so someone's able to maintain employment, or investigating abuse and neglect that occurs by caretakers in the home and also in facilities where people with severe mental health may reside.
Yes, I was delayed due to the mute button. But Dr. Moss, one of the issues I have wanted to bring out is the implementation of the new mental health law. Do you have any comments on how people are being advised of the new mental health law and what, if anything, the psychological board is going to participate in advising that community?
Well, I think that once it does come into fruition, that it starts, the board could help by vetting the people that they plan to employ and make sure that they're licensed, and may also be able to offer them some continuing education to maintain the license and just to increase their skill levels.
And
What
perhaps
about the issues of involuntary commitment? Has that changed, to the best of your knowledge, since the passage of the law?
I don't really have any knowledge of that. I don't know whether it's changed or not.
And what are your thoughts on what would help out all psychologists and all psychiatrists as far as medical record handling within the Virgin Islands?
Well, I guess record keeping may have been a problem in the past, and access to records. So, just improving that whole system of communication between various agencies like the Department of Human Services and mental health, that an improvement in their communication would probably be very helpful. Oftentimes people with severe mental illness, they're not capable of looking out for themselves and bringing their records and talking about their past and themselves and their conditions. So it's important that records be able to be shared.
Attorney Jennings, maybe you could tell our listeners about the new law that you're referring to.
Well, basically the legislature passed a new mental health law. I don't remember if it was 2022 or 2023, to update the language and issues with regard to procedures for involuntary commitment and the number of days a person can be committed and the procedures for initiating such assistance by a family member or through the court. And essentially, that information would assist mainly relatives and those who are caretakers with respect to addressing behavioral issues so that a person does not harm themselves or others. And so that is in effect now, and we wish to let the community know in order so that wide swath of the citizenship would have that information when they go for such involuntary commitment.
And
One other issue with
I was just going to ask you to explain maybe what an involuntary commitment is and why that is something that's sometimes needed for people who are living with severe mental illness.
voluntary commitment is a procedure where a person may harm themselves or others, and essentially a relative or caretaker, most likely, when they can no longer control the person or the person is delusional or having severe mental health behavioral issues, they should be able to contact the court or the police in order to have assistance in having the involuntary commitment process initiated. The problem we have in the Virgin Islands is essentially lack of acute residential facilities. St. Croix Hospital, having been destroyed after Hurricane Marilyn, doesn't really have the facilities to house someone who's going through severe issues or delusional issues. And St. Thomas does have a facility, which at times persons are transferred over from St. Croix to the St. Thomas acute care facility at the hospital. Again, this is a long-standing issue, not only in the Virgin Islands, but across the nation with regard to the numbers of persons who are in need of mental health services. And for the Virgin Islands, we've had 2 declared mental health crisis declared by the governor of the Virgin Islands. And we hope by educating the community what services are available so that they can bring the matter to the forefront for the senators and other healthcare providers, as well as the government, to work on the issue collectively, and so that everybody's informed of what's available and what is not available in the spectrum of the services. Dr. Moss,
Yes.
one of the issues is the availability of access for caretakers and parents when a person is placed on off-island facilities. What is your information in regard to that aspect of the delivery of services in the Virgin Islands?
The only thing that I understand is that the Department of Health basically controls that, whether or not parents have the ability to go up there financially, whether they, send them or not. As far as I know, it's been the Department of Health and the individual caseworkers that make those types of decisions.
Are you aware of any follow-up by the government when persons are placed in those off-island facilities?
Well, I've had individuals that were placed in off-island facilities, and parents could visit once that I could, the Department of Human Resources facilitated that. I gave them permission and bought them a ticket.
Dr. Moss.
And yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Dr. Moss, do you think that impacts someone's ability to receive treatment when they're removed from so far from their community and everyone that they know?
I think it depends on the circumstances. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. In general, they do need support of family and friends. So if they are off island, it probably, in most cases, would be not advisable because they would not have the support and they would have a new environment that they would have to adjust to. And individuals with behavioral problems or mental health problems, this would just be an added stress and anxiety for them. So if there were, a facility in the Virgin Islands, it would definitely be to their advantage. It would definitely be better.
Any comments on outreach of the psychological board to the community?
Well, the psychology board would like to advise everyone in the community to make sure that the individuals that they are seeking services from are licensed. And we do publish a list 4 times a year in the daily news so that individuals can look at that. And then my other advice would be if they can look it up on the internet to see who's licensed, and make sure the person they're dealing with is licensed.
Are individuals able to reach out directly to the board and get that information?
They can go through the Department of Health. Right now, the board doesn't have a phone number. We don't have a full-time person to answer the phones and do those types of clerical things. But they can go through the Department of Health, and that number there is 340-774-0117. And they can confirm whether a person is licensed or not.
Great, thank you. Dr. Moss, what are some daily habits you might recommend for people to maintain good mental health?
Well, a good mental health requires a holistic approach. So that would be, that you want to get plenty of sleep. You want to have a proper diet. You want to socialize. And I think it's important that you have a support group and, and some aspect of spirituality, not necessarily religious, but, some connection with nature, the universe is always conducive to good mental health.
And
And did I say exercise? I don't know if I said exercise, but exercise is very important because it does change the brain chemical. It does make you feel better. And especially for individuals who are depressed or obsessive compulsive, the exercise can alleviate some of that anxiety and depression.
do you have any advice to how parents can support a child who's struggling emotionally or behaviorally?
Right. Well, I do think it's very important that they do seek help to get, maybe they may need a behavior modification program, which would just be very structured, ways to mold behavior. They may need to go to the school and work with the teacher and then definitely see what's going on in the schools. If they're having any conflicts in the school with other children or with teachers, and just be very involved in their child's life, see who their friends are. And I think too, one thing about that I know about the West Indies culture, oftentimes it's very punitive and use try to use negative reinforcement, which is not a good thing. You always want to use positive reinforcement, and you may need a professional to help you develop your own skills with that. And after a few sessions, you may just learn how to do it and how to deal with your child in a much better way, much more productive way, because you want to have a good relationship with your child and you want it to be positive. So you don't want to be punitive. You don't want to punish him for everything that you think is wrong. You want to reinforce things that they do that are positive, that are good, and handle it differently. So that's when it's going to be to your advantage to see.
Do you think social media plays a role in adult and children's mental well-being?
Yes, I do. I think social media does, as well as television. It creates an environment that's not really based on reality. And so both children, adolescents, and adults believe that things should be different than they really are. And that causes anger and resentment. And it influences mental health because you're not happy. You're not living this ideal life that is reflected in social media or on television.
Thank you, Dr. Moss, for sharing your insights about mental health and about the board, the importance of having licensed mental health professionals, and the importance of taking care of our own mental health and supporting our family members who are struggling. And thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you to our audience for tuning in and listening to Ability Radio. Until next time, stay informed and take care of yourselves.
The views expressed on this program are not necessarily those of WTJX, its board, staff, or underwriters.